Today's guest is one that I've been looking forward to doing an episode with. Rena Rennebohm is somebody that I've followed for a while and really always impressed by her content and her style and the way she goes about things, and really excited to have a fun conversation with you today. How you doing today, Rena?
I am wonderful, thank you. And I am so honored you've never told me those things. So I feel a little blushy over here.
Well, I think it's something where you can tell when somebody's really a natural for the role that they've been given in life. And I feel like you are that, right? You're meant to do this. And it's really cool because I think what you're meant to do is something that is really, really helpful to our industry as a whole. And oftentimes is an underserved part of our industry, which is that service advisor role and really being able to do a lot with the training side of it and making sure that we're getting folks up to speed. So, with that, I should probably start with tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah. Well, thank you. So we do service advisor coaching and we do it in a very similar capacity as the owner coaching platform. So if a shop owner meets with their coach, they generally meet with them one-on-one and then maybe have the occasional group meeting. And I found that when I very first started doing this, being a service advisor trainer, I would teach classes and people would get really excited about the class. They would leave, they would be pumped. Then I would talk to them in like 30, 60, 90 days, and they would say, there was a few things I really wanted to implement that you have gone over, but I actually forgot about them now. I forgot what they were. And so what I started doing is I started coaching people because they really do want to implement the things that they're learning. It's just they get back to the shop and you're back into the race and it's really hard to remember what you wanted to implement. And then if you're a one man show, i- so we generally start by sending our low man on the totem pole into training or coaching, and then we want them to be the one that makes the changes at the shop. And that doesn't really work very well. So we started working with people one-on-one and we started working with them every single week. And when we start with a shop, we actually very rarely ever start with like your brand new person. We're going to start with your manager, we're going to start with your leads, and we're going to teach them the way that we want things done at the shop or the way that the shop wants things done. And then you'll see it slowly, well, actually quicker, but slowly trickle down to the low man on the totem pole instead of trying to get this guy to make the changes up here. Does that make sense?
It totally does, and I think it's such a brilliant way of looking at it because if you don't get that buy-in from the top or you don't get those best practices that are actually being practiced at the top, it's going to be hard for a newer person to really embrace that or even feel safe enough to do some of the things they're being taught.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I
So,
oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rena.
well, I was just going to tell you more about our program because that's not it.
All
Um,
right.
so over the last couple years, our service advisors have said to us numerous times, we want more technical training. And so when I was writing service, our customers didn't have a supercomputer in their hand where they could Google how much is a water pump on my car and get a number in their hand, right? So the advisors have been asking for more technical, and I'll tell you, I pushed against it and against it and against it. And then we started a technical training program. So one of our coaches was a master certified technician. And so he has put together a 16-week program where we put advisors in it once a month and they sit and they listen to how things work. Like, what are the numbers on the side of the tires and why would you want to know that? How do brakes work? How does your suspension work? So we do that. That isn't is something that's required. That's an optional program that people can opt into. And then we do a once a month peer group, and the peer groups are once a month we meet with maybe 10 to 15 service advisors and we talk about hot topics. So this month our topic is building more value, and it's just about the really, really basics. Like, do you know your customer's name and are you using their name? Are you calling your customer to check in and tell them what's going on with their car, even if there's nothing going on with their car? And then we report back to the shop owner every week and let them know what we did. So that kind of wraps our program up into a pretty little bow. You meet with us once a week, a monthly peer group meeting, and it's a lot of we spend a lot of time. So I'll tell you that you're not asking me, but we have a lot of people say, well, your program is more expensive. At the end of the day, we're not. We are actually probably the least expensive for what we provide.
Oh, that I'm sure there are a lot of people listening right now. And as even the part where you're talking about the technical side of service writing, so often I think we put people out there on an island, and you see so often where maybe we hire somebody that doesn't have industry background but has good people skills or whatever
Mhm.
it might be, and it can be kind of an eerie feeling to be on that island and not fully confident on what you're trying to sell or what you're talking about. And, I think that does lead to some of the service advisor turnover. We'll talk about that as we go through the podcast. And we'll talk a lot about everything service advising in this show. So I'm excited about that. But I do want to talk about your origin story and what got you into this industry in the first place, because I do love hearing about people's stories, and you've got a pretty cool one.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, so growing up, my dad had a wrecking yard. And so, like summer vacations, I spent in the back office of my dad's wrecking yard. And so I learned about cars really young age. And then, my dad would take the cars to on the semi to the scrap mill. We did that. We went on in the tow trucks to pick up cars that were going to be, in the wrecking yard. I feel like it was never like I wasn't young and going, I want to be a service advisor. Like that it wasn't my dream. It's just what I learned about. And I really always liked people and I enjoyed like you, like I really actually enjoy people. I enjoy their stories. I enjoy having conversations with them. I enjoy helping them. So then I went away to school and again, not really sure exactly what I wanted to do. When I came back, I ended up working at a repair shop in their accounts payable receivable. And I never took the job actually. The day that I started, they said, "Hey, our service advisor just I think quit or was fired. I don't remember." So I sat in that chair and I never left. So I worked as a service advisor for 12 years and I was really fortunate that when I first started as an advisor, the shop that I worked at was a huge proponent of training. They sent me to training. And then that training company reached out to me about 10 years later and said, "We've been following your career and we want you to come on board with us." So I did that. But then I quickly realized that I wanted to do it different because, like I said, training is great. I do classes still, but to me, coaching that's where it's at. So I decided to open up a coaching company.
How, when you make that decision, how hard is that decision? Is it something where you had, I guess I go back to my own experience, right? And starting a company, it is an intimidating thing. There's so much uncertainty, there's no guarantees, and it is a little less safe than maybe what we've grown up with or we're accustomed to. How was that decision making process in your head as far as, hey, I'm going to make this leap and I'm going to do this?
Well, I am very lucky because my husband is very supportive and he encouraged me. And I think coming from a family of self-employed people that it just I guess me is it in your blood? I don't know. If it is, it's in mine. And so I think that just the encouragement, it was crazy because my friends, we sat around for many Friday nights talking about what's the name of the company going to be? What are the colors going to be? It was like my whole group of friends helped with it. They didn't, come to work with me every day, but they helped me pick everything out. And so I feel like I was just encouraged by the people that I surrounded myself with.
Yeah. And similar to me in that you take a lot of pride in that up front, right? And kind of that brand is going to be something you're going to live behind for a long time. So you want to be intentional about it. But then also, same thing here where I was lucky to have uh my family own a shop, and I think you're exposed to some of the challenges up front. And I always say starting a business is very, very difficult. Anybody that's ever done that, I give them all the credit in the world, because there are so many challenges and so many things you can read about in a book, but until you actually go through it, it's hard to describe to somebody. So I do think there's that element of, there's going to be challenges, that there are going to be roadblocks in front of you, but you still make that push, and it's not an easy thing to make that call, but when you do, you kind of go all in. And uh, pretty cool to hear maybe you had some similar experiences to me and just getting it off the ground.
Yeah, having a good support system. And I'll tell you, I think that now AI helps people so much because you can say, I'm opening up a business in X state, and what are the steps that I need to take? Because I had to move my business from Washington to California, which was not easy because I think most people are moving their companies out of California. So people in California were like, wait, what? You're starting a business here? Okay. So it was complicated, but I did get like AI was very helpful in identifying the steps that I needed to take. And then it's all about the right people. It's just finding the people that want to help you, that you can trust to make good decisions for you, or at least lead you in the right direction. So for me, it's all about the people that I work with. I work with like even the coaches that work with me, they all own shops or have owned shops or run shops. So to some degree, they all are my mentors. And I'm so lucky to have this group of people that I work with that help me grow the company even when I don't want to, that push me to do things even when I'm like, I don't want to do that. It's change. But I have grown these amazing people. I have just found these amazing people, and we've found each other. So they say, one of the guys that I work with says, good people find good people.
That's a great it's great to hear that. I think that is one of those things, again, until you're in business for yourself, or even if you're leading a team of people in general, that it goes across whatever industry you're in, right? It's the people. And I think sometimes it gets lost in corporate speak at times where, I've worked at companies in the past where they say it's all about the people. I kind of, yeah, I don't
Is
think
it?
you quite really think that, but it really is. And I think the more quality people you have, and that doesn't matter if you're running a business like you are, or a shop, or whatever it is, good people make a gigantic difference. And if you have a team of go-getters and people that, as you mentioned, push you to kind of take it to the next level, that is invaluable. That is really, really, truly invaluable.
It is.
How much do technicians really make? At WrenchWay, we work with some of the best shops and dealerships across the country, and we've discovered that technicians often earn more than what some online sources suggest. For example, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that technicians make an average of $47,000 per year, but we know that's not reflective of the true earning potential of technicians. We've teamed up with ASE to create an online technician pay tool, a free, easy to use resource for both aspiring technicians and those already in the automotive and diesel industries. This tool lets you explore real pay data with customizable searches by industry, shop type, location, and experience level. Check it out at wrenchway.com/pay or follow the link in the show notes. We also encourage current technicians to anonymously submit their own pay data to help make the tool even better for everyone. Lastly, thank you for your continued support as we work to promote and improve careers in automotive and diesel. We couldn't do it without you. So let's shift that to talk about why we're here today, right? That it's the service advisors. And when we talk, I think that's a really good segue for good people. Oftentimes, I don't know that the industry as a whole gives service advisors the respect that they deserve. I've talked a lot about this in past episodes and different types of content that we've done, but a good service advisor has such an impact on a shop. They touch almost every element of the business, including customers, technicians, managers, ownership, whoever it is. They're having conversations and relationships with everybody. Yet, oftentimes, they kind of get left in the shadows. Even at times, they're the face of the company, still get left in the shadows. Why do you think that is?
Well, I don't know why. I think, here's another person that service advisors touch is our suppliers.
Oh,
And, we want to have good relationships with all of these people. Maybe it's because shop owners feel like the job is easy. Maybe it's because we have automated a lot of what service advisors do. At least that's what all of these like subscriptions and different software that we have is it's meant to help make advisors' jobs easier. But I don't see that. I see that advisors' jobs are getting harder because we have so much technology. Somebody has to manage that technology. And so maybe that's what it is that we have identified the we put a lot of resources towards advisors, and so we think that it makes their jobs easier. What do you think?
I agree. I think, I kind of go back to my time growing up in a shop and starting off as a technician. And I think at times there wasn't the respect level from a technician standpoint for a service advisor, because you could look through the window and they're sitting there on their computer in the air conditioning. And at the time, our own family shop didn't have air conditioning. That's changed today. But you're working your tail off and banging your hands up and doing stuff that hurts. And then you look in and they're having conversations and look like they're not doing much. What you find out later in life is how stressful that job is and how much goes into it, and in how many conversations are pulling you different directions. And so, to the point to where in my own experience in running shops, I have started to, even as part of our onboarding process, have technicians spend time with the front counter people, because I want them to understand how difficult that job is up front. And I think that technician service advisor relationship is so important, yet we don't give it a whole lot of time. So really trying to showcase how talented a good service advisor is really important to getting them the respect that they need.
Well, and then also, like, not that I want to like defend a technician, but I have
Yeah.
worked with plenty of technicians that have had a handful of bad service advisors, right? Like the service advisor actually never presented. So they would do their inspections, give them to the advisor, and then the advisor makes the decision of what work is going to be sold and what isn't, if they want to put in the effort or if they don't. And so sometimes the technicians are just burnt out because here they are doing their inspection. And if they don't do their inspection, we throw it back at them and go, this isn't done. You penciled whip this. But what are the checks and balances to make sure that the advisor isn't pencil whipping their
Mm,
inspections? They're part of
yeah.
the inspection. So,
That's a great question. Yeah, absolutely.
well, and look, we do, right? We have KPIs that will keep performance indicators that will monitor both the advisor and the technician, right? So we can look at the advisor and we can see what their average ticket is, average labor sales, what their car count is. There are KPIs that we can focus on for them. And, we can look at close ratio, which this to me, I think that close ratio is a good number to glance at, but I have so many shop owners that call me that say, "Oh, our close ratio." And it's like, okay, we can manipulate this number so easily that I do not want to focus on this. I would rather focus on gross profit dollars. I would rather focus on average ticket. I don't want to focus on close ratio. Again, it's a good number to go, okay, what is it? Okay, cool. but close ratio doesn't pay the bills. So I hear shops tell me, oh, we have a 70% close ratio. Cool. What are you presenting? Like, are you presenting everything? Because most likely, if you have 70% close ratio, your advisors are not presenting everything.
And vice versa, right? If you look at if they're only closing 25%, they might be presenting too much, right? Or
Hmm.
there is, I totally agree with you. And you're the first person I think that I've heard explain it that way. And I couldn't agree more that I think it's a little bit of an overrated number. I
Hmm.
do think it is one of those numbers where even from my standpoint, I will glance at. And if it's kind of in the same ballpark that it normally is, I'm pretty okay with it. If it
Hmm.
spikes up or down either way, I think that makes me ask more questions of what's going on. But yeah, I don't, for me personally, uh, put a whole lot of thought into that one unless something's wildly off.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's something good for us to be aware of, but I just don't think it should be, it's not in my top five.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that there are so many other important factors. I was thinking before you and I talked this morning, I was like, I feel like I'm going to say some controversial things because I feel like some controversial opinions on some things. And one of those is that I feel like one of the, and maybe it's always been like this, but I feel like we don't actually give the technicians our number one priority spot.
Mm,
We do a lot of customer service training for our external customers, but we don't do maybe any training for our internal customers. And so I think that maybe there will be a better and bigger appreciation for a service advisor if they make their technician their number one priority.
ooh, that is a little bit of a hot take, and I think you're right. I think if we ignore that relationship or don't put any time and effort into it, which is very common in our industry, you kind of let that organically go whatever direction it's going to go. And a lot of times, maybe they're not speaking the same language or they're not seeing through the same lens and not fully understanding that they're on the same team. And that relationship from a service advisor standpoint, and I know I've had a lot of conversations with them as well about this, where, and not just our own family shop, but shops where I'm talking with just the ownership group or a service manager. And, I think the soft skills of a service advisors oftentimes it's maybe easier to work on that than it is the technician side, and not saying anything against technicians, but having a service advisor fully understand and comprehend how important those relationships are and the fact that they do take a little bit of work is I think an excellent point. I don't think it's controversial at all. I think like that is really, really important that you get that down. Otherwise, it's really hard to extend that good customer service to the customer if you have your own internal rift.
Yes. Well, I think where it gets controversial is if you were to tell a service advisor without any context, we need to make our technicians our number one. How do they implement that without the customer feeling like they are number two? Because we never want the customer to feel like that they are number two. So I had a shop that what was happening is that they were getting busier and busier. Their shop was growing, but their technician productivity was like dropping. And so we stood back, right? And we gave ourselves like a full view of like what is actually going on. And the service advisors, they were working so hard, right? They had so that the phones were ringing and customers were coming in. But then we had a technician that would walk up that would say, "Hey, I need something. Yeah, yeah, I'll be out there." And we backburnered them and we slowly saw the productivity in the shop just go lower and lower and lower. And then the technicians got to the point where they were like, yeah, look, they're busy. They're going to be on the phone. They're not going to answer. They're with a customer. Like they just knew that advisors weren't going to put them first. And so I feel like they just kind of started to slack a little bit. So we decided to shift the shop's priority, and the priority was going to become the technician. So when a technician walked up and they were in front of a customer, they would say, is it okay if I check in with the technician really quick? I want to get your car in as soon as possible. And so the sooner I get him moving, the sooner I get you moving. So you let the customer know it's in their best interest for me to, and again, you know that there's going to be, because I hear this a lot, there's going to be that technician that's like, hey, next week I need to take like Friday off. Cool. That is something that you can write right here and I can get back to you later, right? So you do have to have a like a system to figure out what is priority for them, right? Because that might be priority for them right then, but I'm with a customer. So it's going to take a little bit of understanding and training between the two, like the office and the shop, to say, yes, you are my priority. And it has to be like, you cannot continue working on a car until you talk
Mm,
to me for me to be one.
boy, that is, there's so much good to pull out of what you just said there, because I think all of us have seen this in a shop where that technician is waiting around for something. And
Yes.
I think there's data to prove that when you get off task, how long it takes you to get back on task. And so if you're waiting around to get that part that you don't know where it's at, or if you're waiting around for them to get off the phone, the service advisor to get off the phone, it can be that roadblock to productivity in a well functioning shop, because there are just roadblocks everywhere when you start looking at it through that lens. That is such a good point.
Well, that shop has significantly increased their productivity. And what ended up happening is their total sales went up because of it. People bought more because of it. Like it actually really works, but you have to make sure that it's implemented with care. So it's interesting to think like a customer calls and they're like, "Yeah, how much for brakes?" And if I have a car that I need to actually make a sale on, that takes priority over somebody coming in the door. But we cannot make that customer feel that that's on the phone, right? And so it's a balance, and it takes a while to perfect it, but it can be done. And this shop that I'm talking about, they have 3 advisors and they have 4 technicians.
Mm.
And their shop also, their average ticket is over $1,200. And they're not in a high-end area. They are kind of in a little bit of an armpit. And the shops around them do not do what they do. And so it is 100% that they have created this procedure in their shop that puts the technicians first, but without anybody else feeling that. And it has, and they do have a lot of staff. Some people might say that they're even front end heavy, but I would argue it all day long that we are expecting our service advisors to put customers first. We're putting technicians on the back burner. We don't have enough service advisors in most shops to actually provide the level of customer service that you want to be provided.
You work with a lot of shops. If you were to put a percentage on the amount of shops that are understaffed up front, would you have a number that comes to mind?
50%,
Yeah, I
maybe more.
think it's
And
fair.
I also think that, and I understand being a small business owner thinking, okay, this is going to be a whole nother mouth that we have to feed. But so far at all of our shops that have added those additional customer service people, they have paid for themselves.
Stuff doesn't get dropped as much. There's, the consistency. I do think that's where process falls apart a lot of times too, right? If you're understaffed and you go and say you have a game plan of how you're going to attack your day, and then inevitably you have all of these other things come up, your whatever game plan you had going into it can kind of go to the side. And even for those people that really, really are intentional about process and making sure that they're following the processes. If it's just a rapid fire throughout all the entire day, every day, it's really
Mhm.
hard to do those little things well.
Yeah, well, I don't think you can do the little things, right?
Yeah.
The little things, so it's like, and it's the little things that make the experience so wonderful for the customer and for your technicians. And so I think that what we're doing is we are removing the ability for the advisors to do the little things because we think that we've automated them. And it's just, I did a podcast a couple months ago that I was saying, hey, let's just go back to basics as far as sales goes, because we have been sold this bill of goods that is, you're going to send the inspection and the estimate to the customer and they're just going to make the decision to buy everything and then you guys just get to do the work. That isn't true. It's just not true. There will be some customers that are like, yeah, sure, let's do it. But there is enough people that need that actual human interaction to make their decision that they won't buy from you. And when I work at shops, not that I do this with every shop, but I have interviewed a lot of technicians because I want to know what they need from us. I work with the person that is providing you every day with what you need. So what do you want us to work on? Communication is the number one thing that they ask for. And it's interesting because the advisors will be like, well, so and so is so grumpy. I don't want to go out there and talk to them. Well, they're probably grumpy because you're not out there talking to them. So I find it to be everybody. It's the internal customer and the external customer want more of the advisor. So we have automated a lot of things, which is great and helpful, but they still need that human. The technician still needs the human to make a decision, and the customer still needs that same one to make a decision as well. So I feel like advisors are spread really thin because they have so many people that they need to give guidance and reassurance and information to.
This week's episode of Beyond the Wrench is brought to us by Jasper Engines and Transmissions. Okay, your customer's engine or transmission has failed, but now is not the time for them to trade their vehicle. Not without a working engine or transmission. Besides, would they have kept their vehicle another 3 to 5 years if their engine or transmission had not let them down? If you answered yes, then Jasper Engines and Transmissions is your choice to give your customer's vehicle new life and many thousands of miles of enjoyable driving performance. When considering the high cost of a new or newer used vehicle, there's a pretty good case to be made for replacing a drivetrain component that has failed or is delivering poor performance. Rather than trading their car, truck, van, or SUV, install a quality remanufactured Jasper product for less than your customer would have to invest in a new vehicle or a newer used vehicle. Check out their website at jasperengines.com to learn more about the money-saving value of Jasper.
Have you, as you're talking through this,
Mhm.
just going to throw some ideas out there and see if you've heard of ideas like this, or just maybe talk through them because it came to mind.
Mhm.
Do you feel like at times maybe dispatch of work is a barrier because it's, you throw it in the business system, there's a time slot there, and you just kind of let it go? Uh, is there an opportunity to maybe have a full-time dispatch, or maybe even that moves to a shop foreman role where you've got somebody that's dispatching work, to maybe take some of that shop or the office to technician relationship, maybe a little pressure off of that? That makes
We,
sense.
yes, 100%. And, one of the shops that I work with, they have this really cool position where they are kind of the foreman for the customer and they're the foreman for the technician. And so Before the customer arrives, this person calls them and says, "Hi, I see that we have you scheduled for this and this on this day. What else are we going to be taking care of for you? I see that you're approximately at this mileage." I went ahead and looked at what the mileage-based services that are due on your vehicle, what those are. And so that person does a significant amount of pre-selling and they really understand the car. Then when the technician now has the car, this advisor they know their technicians. So I have a interview that it's just a document that I created called the technician interview. And you ask your technician, what do you like working on? What do you hate working on? What do you want more skill to do? What services slow you down? Which ones can you get done really fast? What style of communication do you prefer? And you ask all of these questions. I know there's other ones on there. And I also let my technician know, just because, however you answer this doesn't mean that you're only going to get to work on the XYZ cars to do XYZ services. But what it means is that I'm going to try to tailor your schedule to what you like and what you're good at. And it will make the shop more efficient and productive because I'm doing that. And I think it lets the technicians know how much we care about them, because we really are trying to make it work for what their skill levels are and what they like. And so, like, let's just say that you told me that you hated working on, cooling systems on BMWs, and this is what I have. And I know you know how to do it, you just don't like it. So I dispatch this car to you and I say, Jay, I know that this is not what you want. And I really put that to consideration, but I need you to take one for the team for me today. And it is such a different type of, like, instead of just saying, okay, here's your car, here's your car, here's your car, like knowing what you want and what you don't want and recognizing it. And I think it's kind of like because I'm trying to sell the work to you, right? You, the technician, I want you to buy this job for me. I do the same thing with customers, right? So when you drop off your car in the morning, I say, Jay, I know you said that you wanted to keep this car for life. So I kept that in mind. And this is what we found on your vehicle today. So I'm treating them the same. I'm letting you know that I know what your preferences are, what your needs are, what you want from me. And I feel like I get a better sale because of it.
I absolutely love that. I think that is such that the interview part with the technician, it really kind of sets the stage for more conversations moving forward as well. And if you're doing those weekly one-on-ones or daily stand-up meetings, to be able to positively communicate with them and proactively communicate with them. So if you are giving them that job that is probably against their will, that you have that nice little message to say, thank you for helping me out here. We're in a bind and I just need your help. And I think it's an interesting dynamic because of so many shops that are struggling for good technicians as well. It's another retention mechanism, right? You're actually building that relationship with them. You're showing that you care. You're showing that you're listening to them. And regardless of size of shop, you're going to have times where that person's going to have to work on something they don't necessarily love. But if you can communicate with them, that sets the stage for communication and being able to do it in a proactive fashion where it isn't just constantly shoving work they don't love down their throat.
Yeah. I think that, your like customers, they say things like, you have to go to this place, right? Like, they did such a great job with my car. It was done on time. They took care of me. And I think that happens also in the technician world, where they say, man, I work at this shop. You should go and you should see if you can get a job here because they treat us so well. And a lot of it does, right? Like, a lot of it has to do with the service advisor and how well the service advisor treats you and your relationship with the service advisor, and feeling like you don't have to sit and wait. I think about how frustrating it must be for the service advisor. Like, we rely on each other a lot, right? The service advisor and the technician, we rely on each other. the technicians rely on us to make sure that we are writing up a good story. So when the customer comes in, it doesn't say check brakes, right? There's actually like a good story that says, hey, the customer is feeling a wobbling when they're at 30 miles per hour pressing on the brake pedal. Like, so now when the technician goes and looks at the brakes and it's like, yeah, there's like 60% brake life remaining, and they come to the door to tell me that, and I'm on the phone and I'm like, I don't know about you, only that's going to happen so many times that I'm going to get frustrated. I'm going to start to get frustrated with my work. I'm not going to feel valued.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to start looking for that place that, I heard about my technician friends talking about that like.
Oh my goodness. And you talk about turnover, and one of the things that's very concerning to me about our industry is service advisor turnover, right? And how often we're basically chewing up and spitting out our service advisors in it's hard for any shop to, if that's a revolving door position, for that person to gain relationships with the technicians, gain relationships with the service manager and with the customers. And you know as you're talking through this, you just look at opportunities to clean things up from their end so that it isn't just mass chaos all the time. And I get the sense that we don't talk enough about that position, the complications in that position, and the little things like I remember a boss that I had early in my career was always talking about communicating without talking, and you were just talking through a few examples of that where you can take away a lot of frustration just by cleaning stuff up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Uh, so what I'm hearing is that, and what I'm seeing is that we don't have enough processes and policies for anybody's role. And I think everyone knowing what is expected of each other helps really clarify things. So, you know what I've seen a lot recently, which I would like your opinion on this. So hear a lot of advisors when I'm auditing their repair orders going, well, the technician wrote that. So, you know, and I'm like, the technician writes a repair order now? Like, well, maybe that's why people are like, what do service advisors do if technicians are like, they're writing your repair orders? Well, wow, that blows my mind. And I gotta say, so like, wait, are we holding them responsible for the car and for the technician and for the repair order?
It is so true. And I think you're right. I think a lot of shops rely on the technician for the write-ups. And even in our own case, the technicians will do kind of the rough write-up, and then service advisor will clean it up and clean up everything that is going to be presented to a customer.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a gap even with us, right? Where, and I say even with us, like we don't have any problems. We've always got problems and we're always trying to fix things. But there are things like properly communicating that problem up front to a technician, where a lot of advisors don't ask the questions that need to be asked up front. And then there's frustration from the technician and not getting the full write up. And maybe that grows even more tension within the technician's life. And so it is a very interesting thing to me that we're trying to get the technicians to communicate what they're seeing, and really the general condition of a vehicle, to give the advisor the right tools or the right knowledge to be able to confidently go to the customer and say, here's what we saw, here's what's wrong with your vehicle. And yeah, that's an interesting way to pose that question, because it is a lot of pressure on a technician to write up the repair order. But then at the same time, you kind of run into that same problem we just talked about, where if you're understaffed up front, and the phone's ringing constantly. And I don't know about you, but for me, if I'm having to sit and concentrate and write something up and the phone's going wild at the same time,
Yeah.
the chances that I'm going to put my full effort into that repair order to send off are probably limited. So it's such an interesting thing that you're talking about here, because I don't know that I've got the perfect answer for that.
And I don't have the perfect answer either. And a lot of the time, I think it depends on your team,
Mm,
So if you have a technician that is really articulate, which I have worked with really super articulate technicians, they're going to be able to put it into words that I am not capable of. But now we have AI that can help advisors with it. So ultimately, I think that the best policy is that we hold the technician responsible for the final product of the vehicle, and we hold the advisors responsible for the final product of the inspection and the repair order or the final invoice. So I don't want my technicians checking grammar and punctuation. You don't have time to do that. Let
right.
me do that for you. And you're right. I gotta say, like, I was thinking as you were like, the phone ringing. Can you imagine if your phone was ringing and my phone was ringing right now? Like, all of our stuff is on do not disturb. And if it wasn't, I guarantee you, when you get back from this, I get back from this, we are going to have missed calls, text messages, all of the things. But if we were distracted during this time, it would be so hard to get through it. So I have empathy because I know that advisors have to juggle that. They have to juggle the technicians needing them, the phones needing them, part suppliers needing them, all of the things. And I think that the solution that a lot of shops have found, which I'm not a big fan of, is CSRs, the
Yeah.
customer retention, CS, customer service
Service rep.
representative.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And you have this generally unskilled person that is now in charge of the lifeline of your shop. And I find that to be a little bit scary, which I know that that's not what we're here to talk about today, but that's where my head goes
It's
is
interesting.
we've tried to resolve this problem by hiring unskilled people to, like bring in our customers for us, which is like the hardest thing really that service advisors do.
Mm. This has my mind going in so many different directions right
Hmm.
now. And I do want to ask about phone skills, right? We talked about maybe shops relying on text message selling,
Mhm.
especially with software, the business software now that will automate a lot of that for you. Do you get the sense that we're relying too much on that text message and not picking up the phone enough?
Well, no, I don't. I feel like people aren't even utilizing the text message when they could
No
be.
kidding.
Yes, I do. I feel like a lot of the time I see the biggest problem still is lack of communication. So it really blows my mind when I see like, I listen to recorded phone calls like a lot of my day. And the most common phone call that any repair shop in the country gets is, "Hi, I dropped my car off this morning and I'm calling to see what's going on with it." The number one call. And we aren't communicating with our customers. We aren't saying, "Hey, let me call you at 11 o'clock. Probably not going to know what's going on with your car at 11, or is it okay if I text you?" And so you could send an initial text message between 10 and 11 saying, "Hi, Jay, this is Rena calling. This is Rena with Rena's Auto Repair. Your vehicle is still in line. Nothing has changed as far as what we promised as, like the testing fees. We're just waiting for your technician to become available," like something along those lines. I would make that sound a little tighter than what I just did. And then you, the customer, are a little bit relaxed because you're like, okay, nothing has changed. They're not charging more money. I I'm gonna hear from them again by 2 o'clock. So unfortunately, I think that we don't utilize our technology enough.
I, I think that's an excellent point. And I almost go back to what you were saying with that the shop that you were working with that had that kind of hybrid position between customers and technicians, where you might be able to be a little bit more proactive if you had a position like that, part of their time is that proactive communication with a customer. And, when you look at it that way, even what you mentioned about them having the ability to have that almost pre-call and try to get everything lined up. And if some of those services that you're going to recommend anyway are sold even before the car comes into the shop, you have a better idea for workflow for the day because,
Yeah.
hey, now instead of an hour, it's going to be here for 3 hours and it's not going to disrupt the rest of our day because of recommended scheduled services. It just, oh man, you really got me thinking there because I think that's such an important piece. And if you don't have the ability to add somebody like that, how can you automate some of those pieces so that they are communicating without bugging the customer, right? Like that you're actually getting things that are helpful to that customer in a way that just helps them. It helps almost prevent them from making that phone call and making even more work for you instead of just actually having those impactful phone calls. Hopefully that makes
Well,
sense.
I think it's during the initial appointment, it's authorizing us to send a text message later. So if you called my shop and made an appointment, or let's just say you made an appointment online, I always call to confirm, always. So I would call you and I would say, "Hi, Jay, this is Rena's Auto Repair. I'm confirming that we have you scheduled for Wednesday at 8 a.m. to drop off for an oil service. Um, if it's okay, I'm going to send you a text message later with some possible additional needs or just checking in to see if you need anything else." You know, I think you can text people with their authorization. I also feel like, so if am selling now, I'm not going to have to sell as much later. So I am just kind of shifting my workload. I'm front loading a lot of the time up front with the customer instead of in the back end. And I did this really interesting study. I wanted to see like why our top shops were our top shops. And top shop to me means not total sales, but like gross profit and sales. And it's reviews. So why are some of my shops have the highest average ticket, have great reviews? The number one pattern thing that I saw was that up front, we spent more time with the customer. So our appointment calls are over 5 minutes. And look, like when I was being trained by a coaching company, they said, if you're on the phone for more than 2 minutes during the appointment call, you've gone too long. And I actually disagree with that wholeheartedly because I am spending a lot of time up front with the customer. I'm building the relationship. I am adjusting their expectations. So if you call and make an appointment for an oil change and then you get there and I call you and there's like a huge list of things that you need, your brain, like you just weren't set up for that. And so you're going to say, look, I can't do that stuff today. But if I have a phone call with you ahead of time and talk about our digital inspection, I talk about the mileage that you're at, I am going to be able to, and the thing is let's just say that you end up doing none of that stuff. You don't do any of the factory maintenance because we end up finding a safety issue. We found a coolant leak, but you were set up mentally to have your car there for the day. I'm going to have a better chance of selling it.
Yeah. And as somebody that was on the receiving end of some of that advice of try to get off the phone as quick as possible. I'm not good at that. One, I like talking to people, and I do think there's been so much value over the course of my career in having those longer conversations. Or when you say long, like 5 minutes can be long, and really truly it gives you some time to build that relationship a little bit if the customer's willing, and maybe helps build some of that trust that, why are you doing this inspection? Why are you doing this stuff? Well, we're doing it to protect you, right? Or we're doing it to make sure that your family is safe, and just more opportunity to build that trust for a long-term relationship rather than just having everything be so transactional. I just love your take there on that.
Good. Yeah, me too. I see it work, and you know, it's like it's math, right? So I'm going to spend more time with you up front. I'm going to sell more. My average ticket's going to go up. I need to bring in less cars a day. I get to spend more time with each person because I am bringing in less cars a day. Like it literally, it works out that way.
Mm,
So if
yeah.
your shop is the shop that is spending all of this time, money, and effort implementing digital inspections and doing all these fancy, wonderful things for customers, but then your customer is leaving after, you know, an hour or an hour and a half worth of work, what is missing? There's something missing. The shop is putting in at least the technology, but then why aren't we? Because I promise with that stuff, you will sell more, right? When you implement the inspections, customers love them. They love the proof. They love the proof is in the pudding, right? Or the proof is in the pictures. So people will buy more from you. And so I found that that's our disconnect is it's the advisor isn't connecting with the customer enough. And like you said, it's probably they don't have time, right? Like they're too busy fighting fires everywhere. So we have to slow the shop down and get us to focus on each task with a little bit more care.
That is great advice. And believe it or not, we're getting close to being at the end of the podcast. This has gone so fast. I feel like I'm just at the tip of the iceberg here in questions that I have. But we just introduced kind of a new fun part of the segment where I've got 3 rapid fire questions for you that are very random, but also
Okay.
kind of related to things that we're talking about. The first would be if you weren't doing this job, what would you be doing?
I would want to be a personal assistant.
Really?
Yes, like I love organizing things. I love like kind of, you know, like being the conduit, which I think that's kind of like an advisor, right? Is they're like the personal assistant for the car. Well, it's in. And so I think that that's what I would want to do.
It's a great answer. I absolutely love that. You kind of answered this before, but what was your first job?
My first job actually was a barista. And so for those that
Ah,
don't know what a barista is, like I grew up in Seattle, and so the barista is your coffee person. And so that was my very first job, which by the way is fantastic for customer service because I worked the 4:30 a.m. shift and I had to learn, does this person want to talk to me? Does this person not want to talk to me? What do these people need from me? So it was perfect customer service training.
I one of my last trips to Seattle, I met somebody for coffee, kind of just an industry friend of mine, and the coffee scene out there is very underrated. Like I went out and I'm like, they drink a lot of coffee out here, and there are so many spots to get good coffee.
Hmm.
I had always heard about it, but until you get into that environment, you don't know how much passion goes into the coffee out there.
Hmm. It's true. Yeah.
My last question is, what time do you get up in the morning?
Well, it fluctuates, but I would say probably 5:30,
Yeah,
no later than 6.
no later than 6.
Hmm.
That's a good thing. Good to get rolling right away in the morning. And we talked about your routine and maybe the power of a early workout and kind of just having that routine. It's funny because I asked that question. I'm the same as you. It's a little bit dependent if I'm traveling, if I'm terrible when I'm traveling of like a different sleep schedule altogether. Sometimes you get a flight that doesn't come in until like 2 a.m. or something like that. And I have to get like probably 6 hours of sleep. So it really kind of changes based on if I'm traveling or not. But one of those things that I want to, I think I say this every year, want to get better at a strict routine. I'm not the best at it.
Mm, I'm very routine. So
Yes, I can
I
see
ha
that.
I definitely, and when you like juggle a lot, like I have 2 small businesses, I have to be very routine with everything.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
my friends get annoyed with my routine because part of my routine is like I eat dinner a lot of the time by 5 o'clock. And so when people want to go out to dinner with us and they're like, oh, you want to meet at 6:30? I'm like, no, I don't. Do you want to meet me at 5? Have a late lunch.
Right.
Like,
That would be my wife. She likes to have dinner a lot earlier than I was accustomed to growing up. So it's interesting. I always love hearing about people's routines and schedules and kind of a little bit more of a personal touch there in general. So I said this earlier, but I feel like we were just starting to dive into some of the really kind of good deep stuff. And I really hope we're able to get you back on again, because this has been such a pleasurable conversation. And I've learned so much. And as we're talking over the course of the podcast, you did have my brain going a million different directions. So just really, really appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you reached out. Thank you.
That wraps up another episode of Beyond the Wrench. If you liked this episode, please show your support by rating and following the podcast. You can also watch the video interviews on WrenchWay's YouTube channel. Speaking of WrenchWay, did you know Beyond the Wrench is managed and produced by the WrenchWay team? WrenchWay is an online community dedicated to promoting and improving automotive and diesel careers. We help technicians find the best shops to work at, and we also help auto, diesel, and CTE instructors get more support from local industry. You can learn more by visiting wrenchway.com.